It's like it's sparkly. It's the sound that I get from her. Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever applies to you. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Julia. I'm a contemporary singing specialist based in Australia, and today I am checking out a brand new symphonic metal group to me. It is brand new to me, like a lot of symphonic metal groups. It's got a long established history and quite a large catalogue to get through. So this is going to be my first look at Within Temptation with their song Somewhere. So let's get into it. Stop it, otherwise I'm gonna watch the whole thing through. This song is absolutely gorgeous. I'm loving the lyricism, I'm loving the arrangement. The moment the strings came in, I'm like, okay, we got an emotional one on our hands. The tones that these singers are utilizing. There are two main tones that I want us to focus on. The first is from our first singer. I believe her name is Sharon. She is the lead singer of Within Temptation, or at least that is what Google has told me. Her tone when she starts off is quite light and bright, and as things start to intensify, particularly as she's harmonizing with our other vocalist here, which she kind of sounds like the vocalist that was in that Valley of Queens reaction that I did. But she looks completely different. Anyway, our first vocalist, Sharon, high, beautiful, bright tonality at the beginning there. It is not a classical technique, despite the vibrato, and we'll touch on that in a moment. And then that's compared to the very twangy sound of our second vocalist, super twangy. The amount that they opened their mouth in the beginning created a little bit more of a closed off quality to their singing. So we got a lot of resonance, yes, but we didn't necessarily get a lot of freedom in the vowel. This is not necessarily a bad thing because tension can build tension as an experience so long as it's not there the entire time. So our first vocalist, despite the fact that she is quite high up in her range and the fact that there is vibrato present, this does not mean that she is actually using a classical setup. I would actually say that she's using a very contemporary setup. She's just a high vocalist who uses a lot of vibrato in moments of her singing. And the reason why I'm saying it's not a classical setup is because she's favoring a speech dominant or a consonant dominant delivery style. How Sharon is approaching her singing, I hear contemporary all over it. It is very high and bright and there's a thinness to it. She's got this fluttery, consistent vibrato. The tone is slightly breathy at times. The way in which she finishes out her phrasing almost has a vulnerability to it that I think connects with these lyrics just perfectly. Now, let's go to our second vocalist. When she decided to modify her technique, we got this darkness all of a sudden in her vowel work. I'm going to find an example so that we can hear it. This shift from something that is brighter and almost harsh sometimes in her delivery, in her placement. It really feels like it's sitting in the front of her face, like she's biting into this sound as she's singing through there. And again, consonant dominant for the majority of the time from our second vocalist. So together, they sound pretty cool together, actually, I must admit. And part of that is because they have a similar setup. The harmony between the two sounds is going to not be overwhelmed because someone is using a significantly bigger technique. She does belt at one point, our first vocalist, but it's not the same sound, again, as what you would expect from someone with classical training. Not saying she has classical training, I'm just, again, pointing out pretty beautiful fluttery vibrato that is sustained does not necessarily equal she is using a classical technique. So just bear that in mind. This sounds super contemporary for me. Also, how she slides out of some of her phrasing. Her tone is so sweet. These upper partials in her sound are just carrying out this, almost like it's sparkly, is the sound that I get from her. Not necessarily something I would describe as particularly full. Okay, short hair. You can hear the twang differences in their approach. Part of it is because Sharon is higher up, that is. I love this comparison though, because you can so clearly hear the twang from the second vocalist and the softness of her vocal decisions from Sharon. This is beautiful. I'm loving the lyrics. I'm loving the music. This is the kind of thing where if it played in a movie in a really sad moment, I would probably bawl my eyes out. And then here, they kind of switch it up. We have Sharon with a slightly brighter tone, and then we have our second vocalist who's gone a little bit darker, and she's backed off the twang. So this is something that you can hear a distinct difference in. And then she's back with the twang on that second section. Both of them have beautiful phrase management when they're singing with each other. Do we hear how this twanginess? God, twang by itself sounds absolutely hideous. If we're not sure how twang is produced, I feel like I talk about this in every video, but if you're not sure how twang is produced, it's the flap, the epiglottis, that covers your windpipe when you're eating and drinking. It just closes over and stops things getting into your lungs, or it should do. When it doesn't, that's when you choke. And how it achieves this, it's kind of a similar action actually to the epiglottis folding over, except for twang to occur, the aryepiglottic sphincter, which is the circular muscle that sits just below it, it acts like a little drawstring pouch. When it tightens, it causes that epiglottis to cover. But if you just draw it a little bit and it covers slightly, it creates that extra resonating chamber. New chamber means opportunities for strengthening new harmonics. And that's where that brightness, that twanginess comes from. Gives us the brighter harmonics because that extra resonating cavity is existing there. But yeah, the ability to turn this on and off, it sounds pretty cool. I mean, that's such a clear demonstration from our second vocalist of something that's super bright, super twangy, and then she's backed way off there. Whereas our first vocalist has actually gotten more twangy as she's gotten through this section. Let's finish it. I've been rambling for too long. The truth will free my soul. Wherever you are, I won't stop searching. Whatever it takes, need to know. Sharon's vibrato and the darkness she's able to get into some of the lower parts of her range. This is absolutely gorgeous. So distinct from her upper range work there. Actually, her vowels did become significantly more connected and full throughout this performance. Just harkening back to the training aspect, I do still think it sounds contemporary dominant as far as technique is concerned, but there's definitely some strength in her vowels there when she wants it to be. And her vibrato is lovely and even. And when your vibrato is even, when it's regular, this is usually a good sign of the consistency of your breathing and support muscles, because if the breath is uneven, it's kind of difficult to have a perfect oscillation. So that was absolutely gorgeous. And I am sensing that for this lower stuff, they're trying to get as much twang into that lower end as possible. Not sure if that's to counter the darkness that's coming on into the sound or to give it more strength. That usually indicates to me perhaps not necessarily an undeveloped first register, but someone who's spent a lot of time mixing. And so when they do have to go really down low, the amount of mass that can be achieved within the sound might not feel as natural. You have people who go from the complete opposite side of like only second register all the time. And then there are people who think they're in a first register dominant sound, but they're actually mixing the majority of the time. So thus far in most of the upper and like the mid-range stuff from Sharon, we've been hearing what I would class as a mix. She does go into second register as she ascends, but any of the lower stuff, it's like she's mixing. And as we get even lower, there's things happening in the jaw and in the sound that to me would normally indicate that they're still trying to generate power, but it's sitting in that mixed coordination. If you want that first register to sound really, really beefy, it's going to need a little bit more mass. But I don't know if this is necessarily something that they are not able to incorporate into this particular performance. I'm not saying that for a moment. I'm saying that this kind of coordination is something that you can expect from a vocalist who perhaps spends a lot of their time mixing, who has to ascend upwards into their range, or is very comfortable sitting in that really twangy spot in the middle of their range, and they can generate power there because twang is easier to generate power, sort of mid to upper into your range. The lower stuff, that's when we become a little bit more mass heavy. It can be harder to generate twang. So relying on twang for the bulk of your fullness, that to me becomes something that you must, throughout your career, have decided that this is the sound that you want it to be, or this is the sound that you're happy with it being at. I don't want that to come across as a criticism. I don't feel like it's a criticism. There have been some incredible sounds that have been coming out from this particular coordination in this performance. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I think they're blending together really nicely. There are a few moments here and there where perhaps we're a tiny bit unbalanced, but it's not like a recording. They're singing this live. And if this is a guest artist, perhaps someone who hasn't had to sing this a lot with someone, then you can wind up with it being slightly unbalanced. At the same time, they're coordinating these switches of twang to not twang really well too. So I'm going to err on the side of this is the sound that they want representing here, despite the fact that they are going lower down in the register. And even though I would normally expect there to be more mass down there, that doesn't mean that what they're doing isn't still a contemporary technique. They're still very much sitting in a contemporary setup here. If you wanted even more mass from this sound, for it to be even beefier, you'd have to learn how to belt lower down. And belting lower down is a different coordination, a different feeling to when you're mixing. And even people who can get really powerful mixes, it can be uncomfortable to have to suddenly develop a lot of mass down there. So what they're doing right now sounds great. If they wanted it to be even beefier than this, that's how we would start to need a little bit more mass into the vocal quality, because they're getting a lot of strength and darkness from the shape of their mouth. The mass thing is a vocal fold level thing. How much fullness, how fat are they? How much amplitude are you getting at the vocal fold level? That's such a cool thing to be able to talk about. Oh, this is awesome. Yeah. So that's what I loved about that vibrato there, is we do get a little bit more mass in there, whereas in previous sections, it leans more towards that mixed coordination. Oh, this is such a good example of different coordinations in a contemporary setup. It's so exciting. Vindicated. I knew that voice. God, this is like that time they snuck Flora into the credits music and I was like, I know this. This was wicked. The amount of range on display, like Jesus. We had definitely more than an octave traversed by both vocalists. Like you can have someone come out to harmonize with you. Usually they stick below you. They were harmonizing with each other, flipping who was on top, who was on bottom. Like that's sometimes not easy to do, especially if you're a solo singer. Solo soprano specifically, it can be really hard to suddenly have to be the lower harmony. But yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed being able to, I guess, explore their contemporary setup and how they've modified the expectation of what you might expect from a classical sound, which would absolutely suit this music. I think it would be absolutely gorgeous to sing this with either a full classical setup or a modified classical setup or this beautiful, sweet contemporary sound that they've got going on here. Just her upper work. Sharon's upper register was so spackles. And it's those upper partials that give me that feeling. So she is being able to create those sounds with a very small mouth shape, actually. Sharon's technique is very intriguing, so I think I want to listen to more to investigate this technique more because it's so intriguing to my ear. It's like borrows timbres from different styles. To me, it was almost like, wow, this is happening and this is happening. That's kind of cool. And then the music is gorgeous and the lyrics are gorgeous and them together just fill it in for me. Gorgeous. Anyway, I'm sure I can explore more in a new video. If you enjoyed this video today, please be sure to give it a like, click the subscribe button and the bell notification beside it for more just like this one. As usual, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you are staying healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye! I mean, it's never quickly when I say I'm going to speak about it quickly, is it? No, Julia, stop lying. That's why, right? Right? That's when you choke and you get all icky. Yeah. Wow.